Generating traffic and sales can be a challenge for online merchants. But selling on the Walmart Marketplace puts your products in front of millions of customers who shop on Walmart.com. And right now, sellers who join Walmart Marketplace can save up to 50% on referral and fulfillment fees for the first 90 days. So get started today. Head over to marketplace.walmart.com/savings. That's marketplace.walmart.com/savings.
Welcome to E-Commerce Conversations, a podcast by Practical E-Commerce.
What is going on, Internet? Eric Van Holtz here with another e-commerce conversations. I've got Jaime Schmidt on the other end. I don't know how she would describe her, but I'm describing her as the queen of natural deodorant. She was in the space long before a lot of other players, and they grew an amazing business and were sold to Unilever back in 2017. So I'm lucky to have her on the other end, and we're going to be talking about her story a little bit, and maybe we can learn a couple things or two. Welcome, Jaime.
Hi, Eric. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. The pleasure's all mine. So I read up on your story. I'm, as our listeners know, I'm in the grooming space as well. So it's really impressive what you've done in building this business. If you want to give like a real quick rundown to how you did it and kind of the ins and outs.
Yeah, and I proudly own your title of natural deodorant queen, or that you've assigned to me. It's Schmidt's truly did lead the charge with this shift towards natural products, particularly in the deodorant space. When Schmidt's first came to market back in 2010, there were really only a few natural brands on the shelves. You had your Tom's of Maine and Jason, Nature's Gate, a few of those, but besides that, in terms of the indie brands, they just didn't really exist. So I really, was in a really beautiful timing when I brought Schmidt's to market. And part of that was intentional. I saw the opportunity. I understood that there was certainly a need to shake up the space with some new offerings. But a part of it too was a little bit of luck. I had been on this quest to find, satisfaction in my work and had tried all sorts of different career paths and side hustles and hobbies. And nothing really spoke to me until I landed on formulating natural products. And in Portland, there was no shortage of opportunity to take your products out to market and get in front of your customers. It's just a really opportune city for that. And that was really what kickstarted Schmidt's, was these face-to-face interactions with customers at the farmers market.
So you started off in the farmers market. How long were you acquiring customers that way?
I did that for about a year, specifically just markets, and then I started treading into stores, within the year, and then started taking on some online as well. But things happened fast. When I first started selling publicly, I really didn't have much of a plan for the business. I knew I enjoyed what I was doing. I knew that customers were loving the product. They were telling me at the markets, how much the product had changed their lives, but I didn't quite see the major potential right away. But once I was in retail, it became clear that there was such a demand for a new natural deodorant that worked. And some of the frustrations around deodorants at the time were, one, the ingredient offerings, right? We were on this sort of, path towards more clean, healthy products, but deodorant was just not quite there yet. Most of the deodorants were still full of, chemicals. A lot of them were using aluminum, as antiperspirants. And there was just opportunity to do more there. And then also, with branding, the options on the shelves were really just kind of cliche. The few naturals that did exist just all sort of looked the same. The fragrances were really predictable with lavender, just kind of a bland aesthetic. And so I recognized the opportunity to not just, offer something that worked, that was healthy, but that looked different and was a little more, I guess, modern and forward looking. I wanted naturals to be available to the masses. I wanted them to not just be for a niche customer group. I saw opportunity to reach other customers that really hadn't even considered, that alternative.
How did you get your foot in the door for your first retailer? And was it like a grocery store, or what kind of strategy did you have?
Yeah, it was a pretty organic process. I had retailers approaching me at my booth at the markets and saying, the customers had been coming into the stores looking for the brand. So I was fortunate in the sense that a lot of these retail accounts sort of fell into my lap in the early days. But once I, saw the potential in retail, I quickly made that a part of my my daily work really to reach out. And I was going into local stores. I was a new mom. I had my son was, gosh, a few months old, and I'd take him into the stores with me and pitch my product. And in Portland, there's a lot of opportunity with co-ops and natural grocery stores. And then once I had really saturated the market here, I made my way up to Seattle area, and just the West Coast, the Pacific Northwest in general, just was really welcoming to this type of product. And then within a year or two, I was actually had national distribution that really just played out, again, really organically. A lot of it was word of mouth. I had connected with some bloggers pretty early on who had heard about Schmidt's, wanted to try it. And then they talked about it and people wanted to carry it. This was back when YouTube influence was really strong. I think that was one place where a lot of people went to learn about new products. And so that was a really effective way to spread the word about Schmidt's that didn't cost anything.
Yeah. So you guys, to scale this growth, so you talked about bringing on a national retailer. We had to do that as well. And it was quite a big investment up front. You guys worked with investors in the early days for funding that, or is it just self-funded?
Yeah, Schmidt's was funded out of my husband's personal bank account, which was real small and humble at the time too. We had both been social workers before I started the company. He continued on as a social worker the first couple of years, and we were kind of living off of his salary. But then I also had a couple side hustles too, which really I saw as the seed money for the business. So what that really looked like was some private label products that I was making for like local spas. I also hooked up with a local retailer who was selling DIY kits online. So I was making these DIY lotion kits and things. So it was all, really relevant to the work I was doing with Schmidt's, but it was a nice way to get a little bit extra money that I could put right back into the business.
Okay. And those are done under like different brand names. They weren't associated with Schmidt's?
The private label work I was associating with Schmidt. So I would partner up with the spa, and I would say, a joint project between the spa and Schmidt's Naturals. So it was also a nice way to kind of get the word out about my brand too.
Okay. And were you guys manufacturing your product as well?
Yes. So that started in our kitchen, very small house here in Southeast Portland. And yeah, so I was starting with batch sizes of, maybe 20 deodorants on the stove top. And that just continued to grow as demand went up. And my first warehouse, I was about maybe 2.5, 3 years after I had made my first deodorant. And that was right around the corner from my house. It was a small space that had been converted for my use. I found a landlord who was just really flexible and willing to work with me on really flexible terms. And we converted this kind of old beat up space into a place where I could hire a few people and increase my batch sizes and have, daily USPS and UPS pickups. And then from there, we scaled more. I mean, we had 3 warehouse moves within 4 years. It was just absurd, the growth. And it was always really hard to predict. You don't know how fast you're going to grow and how much space you're going to need. And so we were outgrowing our spaces really fast, and, probably had some poor judgment calls there with some space planning, but it's not easy. And, you're talking about bringing in equipment, right? You have the mixing machines and the melting pots and the labeling lines, and just building out these, full assembly lines and shipping departments. And, next thing you know, we had 150 employees working across 2 shifts.
What was your decision for making it in-house versus working with contract manufacturers?
I really liked the control, and it had been born out of, just my own personal love for making. And I think that was, is really unique. I know a lot of brands start with a business idea, and then, the first step is to find a contract manufacturer to make it. But for me, I started more with the product, which then turned into the business idea. So just naturally, I kept manufacturing in-house. I really enjoyed it. I liked being close to the product, but it definitely had a lot of stresses. I think it's a whole different way of doing business because there's so much that can go wrong and so many things to learn, and pretty incredible when I look back and just think that I, was running this full manufacturing facility and with zero experience or knowledge going into it.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. We've taken the route of, designing and formulating our products in-house and then working with appropriate manufacturers based on their capabilities, which, I look at it as it's essentially like 2 different businesses, because you have to run a business through the mindset of a manufacturer, and then you have to also run the business through the mindset of a marketer. And right. I would imagine there's a lot of, I want to say hostility between the divisions, but a lot of conflict over what's going on.
Yeah, that's so true. And one thing I loved about in-house manufacturing is you have so much control over things like limited edition offerings. When you're working with, co-packers and contract manufacturers, the lead times are so significant and there's so much planning involved. And whereas if you're making in-house, you can just, pull something off so quickly. And there's definitely huge benefits to both. And I did end up working with contract manufacturers later. Once the demand for the deodorant was so high, once we had launched in Target, Costco, Walmart, we just couldn't keep up internally, even with the 2 shifts. So we did take on a secondary co-packer. But that was not easy because our deodorant formula was so different from any other deodorant formulas that were out there. So these co-packers hadn't worked with, these type of ingredients. And so they were causing problems, clogging up the machines. And just, so there was a huge learning process that had to go into, some of these co-packer relationships. And that in itself was a challenge and something new for them.
Yeah, I would imagine it makes it a little bit easier having done it yourself where you can share some of that knowledge versus someone who's coming in just working with the manufacturer who is just like, nah, we can't do that, which I think a lot of co-packers kind of go that route.
Yeah, real quick on that, I want to add, I can see co-packers losing patience in that situation, but they were so determined to make it work because they saw, these huge POs from Walmart and Target and Costco, and they wanted to fill it. And so they were determined to make it work.
Yeah. Well, that's when you have the right partner.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the limited edition strategy. Was that primarily for your retailers or was that for your direct-to-consumer channels?
That was mostly D2C. It was great because it was really like a great opportunity to keep strong traction coming to our website once we did have such widespread retail distribution because the D2C had been so strong for us. And, once we had launched in places like Target, of course, there's the concern that that's just going to die off completely. And so having the limited edition scents was a great way to keep people coming to the site. That was one part of our strategy. We had other things we had, of course, had to consider free shipping options and regular promotions to keep those steady sales online as well. But one thing about the limited edition scents that worked out well for us is, if we had any overstock at the end of the season or what have you, we had retailers like TJ Maxx who would buy out all that extra inventory and then be able to sell it in stores. So it was the perfect sort of way to transition out of those seasonal scents to have a retailer like TJ Maxx.
Yeah. With these retailers, are you working through like brokers or distributors or directly with the partners?
Yeah, a little bit of both. Some of the earlier retailers, were managed just directly. I was responsible for managing them and really enjoyed it. But as we got bigger, we bringing on brokers helped a lot, in navigating some of these relationships and opening up new doors. And then distributors too. Some retailers required that we work with a distributor because they didn't want to buy direct, but partnering with the distributor had other advantages too, because that also opened up, new doors that we otherwise wouldn't have access to.
Have you found any kind of issues with, like gray market sales or, a race to the bottom for pricing?
I think the biggest struggle was Amazon. I actually fought that for the first few years. I just didn't want to sell on there, but then we sort of lost control and people started selling Schmidt's on there. And so I thought, well, if they're going to do it, I have to do it too. And it was a great channel for us. We had huge, revenues there, but it just was so tricky to manage the pricing on there. And not just pricing, but, quality of the posts and the photos people were using and the packaging that they were shipping our products out in. And you can hire people to help, manage your pricing and to make sure people are abiding by the, suggested retail price, but it doesn't always, it only does so much. Really, people find ways around it. And
yeah, it's like whack-a-mole.
Amazon itself is just it's a beast.
We've gone the route of just working directly with our retailers, and subsequently we don't sell on Amazon either. That's something that we wanted to avoid.
Have you avoided it successfully?
Yeah, there's always going to be the arbitrage play where someone buys it on Target and then they sell it on Amazon, or they buy it on our store and sell it. But we, because we have the copyrights of our photography, we require them to essentially put their own photos up.
Oh, okay.
Which means they take crappy photos and it kind of looks like it's stolen product or janky product.
Right.
So I'm one of these guys where I'm okay with our brand looking bad on Amazon because there is no official partner to sell on Amazon. And every once in a while we'll have a vendor who, we have agreements that they don't sell on Amazon, and we'll find out who they are and they lose their rights to it. So, but it is, a little bit of that whack-a-mole process.
Mm-hmm. And they'll sell under a different name usually, right?
Yeah. No, I was just going to do a little bit of bitching about the shady sellers on Amazon.
Yeah, there's a lot to say about that. Our turning point was really I had a feature on Fox News of all places. And once I was on TV, just the Amazon potential just exploded. So I had one of our e-commerce retailers that had been selling Schmidt's on their website started selling on Amazon after this Fox News feature. And then her sales just exploded. And so I wanted to keep up with it. And I thought, dang, she's making bank just selling my brand on Amazon because of this one TV feature. And so I need to compete with that and have some, guidelines around it. And
How is your company broken up between direct to consumer and retail?
Yeah, I'd say we were probably about a 70% retail, 30% e-com once we were around the acquisition time with Unilever. It was a struggle once we had gone into mass retail to really keep the D2C strong, but we did great. I mean, I'm impressed with the way we were able to do that and through, just huge ad spends online. I mean, that's really where a lot of the strategy came in. And I mentioned the limited edition offerings and that sort of thing. We had subscriptions, which helped too.
And then talk about how the business is structured to be able to, in my opinion, run two different businesses. Did you have a team that were split across, or how was your team set up to handle that?
Yeah, we had a marketing team that was headed up by my husband, Chris Cantino. He ran really the whole D2C channel, was also responsible for our brand team and our digital marketing. And then the wholesale side, I mostly managed. So everything was, we worked well across teams. I mean, we're also a married couple, so naturally we were having conversations about it. But we were all, based within the same office. Schmidt's headquarters are here in Portland, and we, all sat closely together and just worked side by side with the strategy, and it worked nicely. And now that Unilever owns Schmidt's, those teams are still in place. Actually, we still have our headquarters here in downtown Portland. We're still managing the sales mostly from here, with some extension over in our Unilever's headquarters in New Jersey.
So Michael Camarada, is that how you pronounce his last name?
Mm-hmm.
He came into the business in when did he join the business?
Michael joined me as a partner in 2015.
Okay. And tell me a little bit about that. Were you at a point in the business where you weren't scaling smoothly, or?
Yeah, well, actually at that point we were growing very, very fast. And I wasn't looking for any, sort of outside partnerships, but I was approached by a couple people. It was Michael and his business partner, Kevin Schmidt. His last name was Schmidt as well. They had heard about Schmidt's through Kevin because he had some, his last name was the same and had just, discovered us that way. And the two of them approached me and said they were interested in some kind of partnership. And we looked at a few different, ways to structure that. We first actually had been talking about some private label opportunities and profit sharing and things like that. But what we landed on was a partnership. And then we worked together for the couple of years leading up to the acquisition.
Okay. How did you decide to bring on an additional partner? What was the thought process behind that?
They convinced me, actually. As I said, I wasn't really searching. I had other people approaching me sort of interested in investing in things, but I was not looking for investment. The partnership opportunity was more attractive to me because I thought if I'm going to bring somebody on, I want them to bring more than capital. And so what Kevin and Michael had presented was access to, some partnerships, like some retailers that I hadn't yet explored, and some strategies around marketing and things that I was interested in pursuing. And it worked well. We had, different skill sets, and together we're able to continue growing.
Would you say that he's kind of taken over the operational role or the vision role, or?
No, he's no longer with Schmidt's. I had continued to lead the company as CEO up until the acquisition, and then he stayed with them for about a year and a half. But he's moved on to something new.
Oh, okay. So yeah, you guys you grew it to from my research, y'all were doing about mid 8 figures when y'all were acquired by Unilever. And
a 9-figure acquisition.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about that transition. You've built a company that is your last name. And as me, another entrepreneur who wants to build a business in his last name, and the thought of selling the business, I always have this fear of, if I sell it, what if they tarnish my name? It's always going to be linked. Is that a concern you ever had, or?
Yeah, I think naturally, yes. But I also, at the same time, really found security in knowing that my name was on the brand, because it would be forever mine, right? And the legacy could live on. And so I trusted the team that was at Schmidt's when the acquisition happened. I also really got to know Unilever well during our conversations. And I knew for sure that they were the right partner for us. And I felt comfortable moving forward. But yeah, it's different, of course, when you're no longer responsible for the day-to-day operations. And, you hope that everybody's going to make decisions that, fit your overall, long-term goals and vision for the business when you started it. But I've been happy with the way things have gone. I worked really hard to develop a roadmap for Schmidt's before the acquisition. So I knew what the future years looked like, really short term. And I'm still involved. I am working as the brand's spokesperson and will always be the founder and, really have a nice, healthy relationship with the team.
So let's dig into the sales process. There's a lot of big players in there. Unilever, of course, in my space, they acquired a Dollar Shave Club for like a billion or something obscene. I assume you guys were pitched to multiple companies, or was it just a relationship with Unilever that you all had established?
We did have several companies on the table at the same time. We brought on Goldman Sachs to help broker the deal, and they were really great for soliciting other interest. And so we had about 4 different large companies that were interested and we were doing diligence with and having conversations and meeting with, and had narrowed it down to a couple that were a little bit more intensive with the diligence. And then Unilever was just a clear winner for me. I really understood, their values and their mission and their vision for the brand, and they had no intentions of shaking up the team or doing things differently. They knew the value that Schmidt's had built and the brand equity that we were bringing, and just they couldn't replicate it. And it was clear that they understood that. And gosh, I'm going back to that time now, and it's such a scary, intense time because no deal's done until it's done, right? Like anything could go wrong, and people change their mind at the last minute. And so, I kind of had my heart set on Unilever pretty early. And so seeing that through to the end was a pretty emotional and stressful time.
What was the reason to sell, simply to deleverage your risk from the business, or was this always the vision when you started back in 2010?
Well, when I started, I never envisioned, first of all, the company growing to as large as it had, and also selling it. It just was never in my thinking. But later on, as we continued to grow and the company took on a whole life outside of me, and I understood there was real potential in partnering with somebody like Unilever to continue to drive us forward, to expand globally. We had pretty strong international distribution that I'm proud to have built, but I knew there was more potential in working with somebody like them. And then access to consumer insights and, distribution channels and raw materials, supply chain. And yeah, it made sense to me. And you mentioned, de-risking. I think there was certainly a huge, load off my shoulders when the acquisition happened. And, I was now in a place where, I didn't have to carry the weight of leading a company with 150 employees and, being responsible for their livelihood and all the challenges and risks that come along with that. And a combination of things. And I also looked forward to, this next phase of my life. And I didn't know what that looked like exactly, but I've taken on some new projects now that I'm really excited about. And I'm able to implement, all the knowledge that I learned from Schmidt's and share it to help inspire other people.
Yeah. I would assume, from what I've heard with most acquisitions, you kind of get these golden handcuffs, right? Where you talk about the deal not being done until it's done. And a lot of times that's years after the paperwork's signed, right? Was there a transition phase for you to be part of the company, or is this still kind of like your baby and you really want to lead and be that spokesperson for them?
Yeah, right now, there's no end date to my involvement. Both sides see the value in it, and I think it's something that will continue. Yeah, so I'm happy to have a hand, but not be, kind of burdened with some of the daily operational stresses.
To me, that sounds like the perfect kind of role.
Yeah.
I'm not an operational person at all, and my company thanks me for not being involved in that.
I never thought I was either, and I kind of, got thrown into it and, owned it while I had to. And looking back on it, it's pretty incredible the things we have to learn when we're thrown in, right?
Yeah, and that's the thrill of entrepreneurship. You always do what it takes to make your business happy and healthy. So now that you've settled into your role at Schmidt's, your new role as a spokesperson, what do you have next? What kind of projects are you working on?
There's a few things in the works, and one I'm most excited about is our investment fund, Color, that my husband Chris and I started. Focus is really on consumer goods, and having grown Schmidt's and gone through that whole experience of learning, all the ropes of what it takes to scale a business and sell it. We have so much to offer these new brands. And so I think one thing that makes us unique is that we do have this hands-on experience that we can offer in addition to capital, where a lot of investors, just bring the money. We really focus on underrepresented entrepreneurs. That's where we see a need for change and really great opportunity. And so most of our investments are in women and people of color. And I've also written a book. It's all about my journey of starting and growing Schmidt's, and it has a lot of tangible takeaway lessons for entrepreneurs. It's called Supermaker: Crafting Business on Your Own Terms, and it releases in September 8th.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
Man, I mean, writing a book is another daunting thing. To me, it seems more daunting than building a multi-million-dollar business.
It's definitely a different sort of challenge. I think the best part of it was looking back on like my whole experience of growing Schmidt's and seeing how much I had learned and grown personally, and going back to like those early emails and, just reliving the whole experience. It was really fun. And now it's all, my whole story is just packaged in a pretty book, and the legacy will live on. And it's fun to sort of wrap it all up into a book.
That's fun. One question I wanted to ask that I missed on. When you were doing the bids to sell the business, what were the companies interested in? Like, what did they want to see from you guys? Were there certain profitability percentages? Were there certain growth metrics? Were there certain distribution between wholesale and direct-to-consumer percentages that they're looking at?
Yeah, I mean, they saw our sales and what we had accomplished and what we were on track to do, and just wanted a piece of it. I think the biggest attraction was that Schmidt's was a natural brand that they just didn't have in their portfolio yet. They have, a number of deodorant brands and personal care products, but they just didn't have that natural one that with high performance and with, really cult customer following. And so what we'd already created was really attractive to them, and they understood the potential ahead of us too. We had a product roadmap that was built out. We had just launched toothpastes and bar soaps and body washes, and had a lot of other products in the pipeline as well. And so all of it was just really attractive to Unilever.
Okay, so there weren't. It wasn't like, I guess in the negotiation phase, they weren't like, oh man, you're D2C. We were hoping for 80% of the business versus retail, and I guess they saw the potential more globally to expand and throw fuel into the fire.
Yeah, and they did really value the D2C strategies that we had used at Schmidt's, and saw potential to learn from us, to apply to their other brands. So that was really cool for them to just see the potential to learn, from us and to use it across their portfolio. And when we sold to Unilever, our D2C we were really heavily invested in it. We were spending about $300,000 online, on ads, and a lot of that was for D2C, but it also, translated over to retail too. There certainly was value in online ads that translated to retail accounts too, and didn't just bring customers to our website, but just provided overall exposure for the brand. So our spend, up until the end was really high and with strong results.
Yeah. Sweet. Well, is there, what I like to ask is, where should people follow you? Where should they learn more about you? What should they do next?
Well, I would love for people to check out my book. It's something that I've been working on for a while. The release date was delayed due to COVID-19, so I'm really eager to get it out into the world. And you can find that on supermaker.com/book. Also, I have a personal website, jaimeschmidt.info. And then on social, it's just Jaime Schmidt for Twitter and Instagram. It's JAIME Schmidt. And yeah, probably the best place to keep up with what I'm up to.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to share your story. I really enjoyed it. I'm very impressed with what you've built, the queen of natural deodorant. Thanks for being on the show, Jaime. And to everyone out there, cheers and keep on growing.